In a small, dusty town far from the big cities, a young woman walked quietly through the streets. Her clothes were old and patched, her shoes thin and worn out, but her eyes held a quiet strength. Every day she worked at a tiny cafe on the corner of the street, cleaning tables and washing dishes. People passed by her without a second glance. Some even whispered about her, calling her too poor to be anything special. Life was hard for her family. They lived in a small, broken house at the edge of town. The roof leaked when it rained, and the walls were thin and cold in winter. Her mother was sick and unable to work. Her father had passed away years ago, leaving her with the responsibility to care for her younger brother. But even with so many struggles, she never lost a certain softness in her heart. While scrubbing the floors of the cafe or carrying plates for customers, she would quietly hum to herself. It was the only thing that made her feel alive, her love for singing. The regular customers at the cafe never noticed her voice. They were too busy talking, eating, or checking their phones. Some even made fun of her poor clothes and tired face. "She's just another poor girl," they said. She could never be talented. But at night, everything changed. After finishing work and returning home, she would sit by the window of her small room, with a cracked old radio playing softly in the background. She would sing quietly. Her voice, rich and full of emotion, filled the empty room. Only the moon and stars were her audience. She dreamed of standing on a big stage one day, but in her heart, she didn't believe it could ever happen. The people around her had convinced her she wasn't good enough. That dream felt far away, almost impossible. One evening, something unusual happened. A friend from the cafe had stayed back late. He was in the kitchen, cleaning up, when he heard her singing. He stopped what he was doing and listened. Her voice was different from anything he had heard before. It was beautiful, full of pain, hope, and honesty. He stood there quietly, not wanting to interrupt, but completely amazed. After she finished, he walked up to her and said, "Your voice, it's incredible." She laughed shyly and shook her head. "No one would care about my singing," she said softly. "They all think I'm just a poor girl." But her friend didn't agree. He took out his old phone and asked, "Can I record you? Just a short video, please." At first, she felt embarrassed and refused. She didn't want people to laugh at her even more. But he gently encouraged her, saying, "You have nothing to lose. Let me show the world your gift." After a long pause, she finally nodded. Her hands shook as she sat down on a small wooden chair. She closed her eyes and began to sing. Her voice, soft at first, grew stronger and more emotional with every word. Even though the kitchen was small and plain, at that moment it felt like a concert hall. Her friend held up the phone and recorded every second carefully. When she finished, he smiled and promised to share the video online. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would even watch it. She imagined people laughing or ignoring it, just like in real life. But in her heart, she also felt a small spark of hope, maybe. Just maybe. This was her chance. Outside, the town was quiet. The same streets where people had whispered about her during the day now sat in silence. No one knew that the girl they had ignored and judged was about to touch the hearts of millions. Her life was about to change, and it all began in that tiny cafe kitchen, where a poor girl dared to sing her truth into the night. The next morning, she woke up early. The sun was just rising, and the air felt cold and quiet. She got ready for another day at the cafe. Her clothes were still the same, worn and patched. Her life still felt the same too, full of work, struggle, and quiet dreams that seemed too far to reach. But her friend had stayed up late the night before. After recording her song, he uploaded the video to social media. He didn't expect much, maybe a few likes, maybe a couple of kind comments, but something strange happened within an hour of posting. People started sharing the video. Strangers from different towns and cities began to comment. They wrote things like, "This voice, so beautiful. And who is this girl? She's amazing." As she cleaned the cafe tables that day, she had no idea what was happening online. The cafe owner was shouting as usual. Customers came and went, and she kept working quietly, but her friend rushed into the cafe, holding his phone. His face was full of excitement. "You need to see this," he said breathlessly. She hesitated, wiping her hands on her apron. "What is it?" she asked, her voice nervous. He showed her the phone screen. Her video had already been viewed thousands of times. The numbers kept climbing higher and higher with every refresh. Her heart raced as she watched the screen. Comments kept pouring. And from people all over the country, some said her voice gave them chills. Others said they had cried listening to her song. People were calling her a hidden gem and a true talent from nowhere. It felt unreal. For so long, no one in her town had cared about her singing. Now, complete strangers were calling her special. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Through the comments, her friend smiled at her. "This is just the beginning," he said softly. "You have a gift, and the world is finally seeing it." That evening, when she returned home, her little brother greeted her with wide eyes. "People at my school are talking about you," he said with a big smile. Even their sick mother, lying on the old couch, looked at her with pride. "I always knew you had a special gift," her mother whispered. It was the first time in a long time that she felt truly seen, not just by her family but by the world. Her friend called again that night. "You won't believe this," he said. "Music producers are commenting on the video. Some are even sending messages asking how to contact you." She didn't know what to say. Everything was happening so fast. Just a day ago, she was invisible, poor, quiet, overlooked. Now, doors she never dreamed of were starting to open. But along with the excitement came fear. "What if I fail?" She asked her friend. "What if I can't sing in front of so many people? What if they change their minds and say I'm not good enough after all?" Her friend reassured her. "Your voice speaks for itself," he said. "You sing from your heart, and that's something people will always feel." That night, lying in bed, she couldn't sleep again. But this time, her heart was full not with worry, but with hope. She listened to the quiet night outside and thought about what was waiting for her. She still lived in the same small, broken house. She still had to work at the cafe the next day. But something inside her had changed forever. Somewhere out there, people were sharing her video. People who didn't know her, who didn't care that she was poor or where she came from. They only cared about her voice, the voice she had kept hidden for so long. In her tiny room, she sang again that night. But this time, she didn't sing only for herself. She sang for all the people who had heard her song online. She sang for her family who had stood by her. And she sang for the dream that finally felt possible. The next chapter of her life was waiting, and she was ready to face it. Her voice, once ignored, was now reaching hearts far beyond her small town. The video had changed everything, but it was just the start. Tomorrow, the world would want to know more about the girl with the beautiful voice, and she was finally ready to show them who she really was. The next morning felt different. Even before she left her home, she could sense that something had changed. Her little brother ran to her, holding a phone. "Look," he said with excitement. Her video had reached over 500,000 views overnight. Messages were pouring in, people from different countries, saying how her voice touched their hearts. When she arrived at the cafe, the usual routine was gone. Instead of the quiet customers who ignored her, there were reporters standing outside. They held cameras and microphones, waiting for her. The cafe owner looked confused but proud. "You're famous now," he said with a smile. "The world wants to meet you." She felt nervous as reporters surrounded her. They asked questions like, "How did you learn to sing?" "And what's your dream now?" Her cheeks turned red as she answered quietly, "I've always loved singing, but I never thought anyone would listen," she said. She kept her words simple and honest. It wasn't a practice speech, it was just her speaking from her heart. Inside the cafe, people who used to ignore her now watched her closely. They whispered to each other, amazed that the same girl they had seen every day was now the talk of the internet. Even the customers, who once made fun of her poor clothes, now asked her for photos. But fame felt strange. She was still wearing the same patched clothes and worn-out shoes. She still had to help her mother at home, still had bills to pay, and yet, the world outside was treating her like a star. Her friend stayed by her side through it all. He helped answer emails from producers and manage phone calls from media companies. He reminded her to stay true to herself. You are special because of your voice, but also because you stayed strong when no one believed in you. He told her in the evening. She sat alone in the cafe kitchen. It felt peaceful there, a small escape from the attention. She thought about her father, who had always told her stories about never giving up. She missed him and wondered what he would say if he could see her now. Probably something simple, like, "I always knew you could do it." As the days passed, the video kept spreading. Celebrities shared it on their accounts, praising her talent. Some of the most famous singers in the country wrote kind words about her online, but she still doubted herself. Could she really perform on a big stage? Would people still love her voice if they saw her in person? One day, a call came from a well-known TV show. They invited her to sing live on national television. At first, she wanted to say no. She was too nervous. What if she made a mistake? What if she forgot the lyrics or her voice cracked? But her friend gently encouraged her again. "You have already touched so many hearts," he said. "This is your chance to show your true self to even more people." Her mother and little brother hugged her tightly. "You are ready," her mother whispered. "We are so proud of you." That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She imagined standing on a stage with bright lights shining down. She imagined the crowd, the cameras, the nervousness. But then she remembered that small moment when she sang quietly in her room. It wasn't about the fame, it was always about the music. Her voice was her gift, and now she finally had a chance to share it with the world. Before falling asleep, she promised herself one thing. No matter how big the stage, no matter how many people watched, she would sing from her heart, just like she always had. Tomorrow would be a new beginning, but tonight, she was still the same girl who sang softly under the moon. The world had come knocking, and she was finally ready to open the door. The day of her first big TV appearance was approaching fast. She felt a mix of excitement and fear as she prepared. Her town, once quiet and full of whispers about how poor she was, now watched her every move with curiosity and respect. Even the cafe where she worked felt different. People who used to walk past her now stopped to say kind words. Customers asked her for selfies, and some even told her how her voice had inspired them. But inside, she still felt like the same girl, nervous, unsure, and wondering if she was really ready for all this attention. She didn't own fancy clothes or makeup. Her wardrobe was still filled with simple shirts and old jeans. When the TV show called and asked what she would wear, she hesitated. How could she appear on a big stage looking like this? Her friend encouraged her gently. "You don't need expensive clothes," he said. "The world fell in love with your voice and your heart, not your clothes." Those words gave her courage. She decided to stay true to herself. She chose a simple dress, one her mother had repaired many times, but it was clean and made her feel comfortable. The day before her performance, she practiced alone in the cafe kitchen after closing time. She sang softly at first, but then louder, letting her emotions guide her. Her friend listened quietly, recording her on his phone so she could hear herself later when she finished. He smiled. "You are ready," he said. "You've always been ready." The morning of the show arrived. A car came to pick her up and take her to the television studio. It was her first time leaving the town. As she sat in the car, she looked out the window and watched the fields and roads pass by. Her mind was filled with memories. Her small room, her sick mother's smile, her brother's laughter, and the cafe where she sang when no one listened. At the studio, everything felt big and new. Bright lights, cameras, makeup artists, and people rushing everywhere. She felt small and out of place, but a kind producer came to greet her. "Are you nervous?" The producer asked gently. She nodded. The producer smiled. Good, that means you care. Backstage, she sat quietly, waiting for her turn. Her heart was racing. Her hands were cold. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. And she remembered what her friend had told her. Sing from your heart. Forget the cameras. Just be you. Finally, it was time. Her name was called. She stepped out onto the stage. The bright lights blinded her for a moment. The crowd was large, but she focused on one thing, the microphone in front of her. The host welcomed her warmly and asked a few questions. She answered softly and honestly. She shared that she had grown up poor, that she had always loved singing, but never believed anyone would listen. The crowd listened quietly, touched by her honesty. Then the music began. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. As the first notes left her lips, all her nerves disappeared. Her voice filled the studio pure, emotional, and full of strength. Every word she sang felt real and honest. The audience sat in silence, completely drawn in. Even the crew behind the cameras stopped what they were doing to listen. When she finished the song, there was a pause, a long, beautiful silence. Then the entire audience rose to their feet and gave her a standing ovation. She looked out at all the people clapping for her and felt tears in her eyes. For so long she had felt invisible, but now they were standing for her after the show. Messages and calls came flooding in. Producers, agents, and fans from all over the country wanted to meet her, but she didn't let it go to her head. When she returned home, she hugged her mother and brother tightly. Her mother's eyes were filled with pride and love. You did it, her mother whispered. You showed them who you really are. That night, she sat by her window again. The stars above her seemed brighter somehow. Her journey wasn't over. It was only just beginning, but she knew one thing. For sure now, it didn't matter where she came from. It didn't matter what she wore or how poor she was. Her talent, her voice, and her heart had brought her to this moment, and no one could take that away. After her performance on television, life started moving fast. Every morning when she woke up, there were dozens of messages and calls waiting. Music companies wanted to sign her. Talk shows wanted to interview her. And journalists wanted to write about her life. People who had once ignored her were now calling her a star. But with all this attention, she felt something she didn't expect out. She still lived in the same small house with the same leaky roof. Her clothes were still simple, her shoes still old. Even though the world now praised her, she couldn't help but feel out of place. Sometimes she looked in the mirror and wondered, do I really belong in this world of lights and cameras? Do they really love my voice, or are they just excited by my story? Her friend stayed close to her during these days. He helped her read contracts and talk to agents, but most importantly, he reminded her not to forget who she was. Your voice didn't change overnight, he said gently. The same girl who sang in the cafe kitchen is the girl the world is falling in love with. Her mother also encouraged her, though still sick. She watched every interview and read every article about her daughter with pride. You are making all of us proud, her mother said. Don't let their fancy clothes and words scare you. You have something they can't buy, a true heart, even with their support. She couldn't ignore the pressure when she met with music producers. They talked about changing her style. Some suggested she dress differently or act more like a star. One even said she should hide her background, saying, people don't want to be reminded of poverty, they want glamour. Her heart sank when she heard this. She didn't want to pretend. She didn't want to erase where she came from. Her voice was shaped by her struggles, her humble life, her quiet nights singing under the stars. That evening, after meeting with yet another producer, she walked alone through the town. The same streets where she once worked quietly now felt different. People smiled at her, waved, and stopped to congratulate her, but she felt heavy inside. Was she changing? Was she losing herself in this new world? When she passed by the cafe, she stopped and looked inside. The tables, chairs, and kitchen were all the same. Memories flooded back, the long hours, the tired hands, and her quiet songs that no one noticed. She sat on a bench outside and took a deep breath. Her friend found her there. He sat next to her without saying a word at first. Then he said softly, "You don't have to say yes to everything. Remember why you sing, not for fame, not for money, but because it's who you are." His words helped her clear her mind. That night, she made an important decision. She would only work with people who respected her story and allowed her to be herself. She didn't want to pretend to be someone she wasn't. Her voice came from a real place, and she wanted to keep it that way. She began turning down offers that didn't feel right. Some agents and producers were surprised. They thought she would say yes to everything, but others admired her honesty and strength. She quickly learned that staying true to herself was more powerful than fame. Even as new opportunities continued to appear, she made time for her family. She helped her little brother with his schoolwork. She sat with her mother, bringing her warm tea and listening to her stories. Fame didn't change her love for them or her commitment to their simple life. At night, she still sat by her window and sang quietly to herself. Even though the world was watching, those quiet moments reminded her who she was. She didn't need bright lights and applause to know her voice had value. It was in her heart, in her story, and in every note she sang. Her journey was far from over, but one thing was clear: she would walk this path her way. She would accept success, but she would stay honest and humble. The world may have doubted her before. They may have said she was too poor to be talented, but now they couldn't deny her truth. Her voice had reached them, and she would never let go of who she truly was. As the weeks passed, her life continued to change, even though she chose carefully which offers to accept. Opportunities kept coming. She was invited to sing at events, to speak on radio shows, and to share her story with audiences far beyond her small town. Each time she stepped onto a stage or sat for an interview, she carried her past with her. Her voice wasn't just beautiful, it was full of real emotion. Every note she sang told the story of struggle, hope, and quiet strength. But fame brought challenges too. People who didn't know her before now had opinions about her. Some wrote articles saying she wasn't ready for stardom. Others criticized her simple style or her refusal to change her image. At first, these words hurt. Late at night, she would sit by her window and read some of the harsh comments online. Her heart felt heavy. She wondered, am I strong enough for this world? Do I really belong here? But then she would think about the kind messages too. Thousands of people from around the world wrote to her, saying she had inspired them. Some said her singing had helped them feel hope again. Others shared that her story reminded them to keep going through their own struggles. These messages gave her strength. She realized that the people who truly mattered were the ones who listened with their hearts. They didn't care about fancy clothes or perfect looks. They cared about honesty. One afternoon, she was invited to perform at a charity event for children who came from poor families like hers. When she arrived, she saw children sitting on the ground, smiling up at her. Some of them wore old clothes just like she had. Their eyes were full of hope and curiosity. As she prepared to sing, she felt nervous again, but when the music started, she remembered why she had accepted this invitation. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She was there to give hope. Her voice filled the small hall, and the children listened closely. Some smiled, some closed their eyes, and some even sang along softly. After the performance, a little girl came up to her and whispered, "I want to sing too. But people say I'm no good because I'm poor." She knelt down, held the girl's hand, and said gently, "Don't listen to them. If you love singing, you must keep going. Your heart is more important than what they say." That moment stayed with her. It reminded her why she couldn't give up or change just to please critics. She had a responsibility now, not just to herself, but to all the people who felt unseen and unheard. Back in her small town, things were changing too. Cafe owner proudly hung a photo of her on the wall. People in the town no longer whispered rude comments. They greeted her kindly and asked about her next performance. Her mother, though still sick, was happy to see her daughter shining. She would often sit by the radio, listening to interviews, where her daughter spoke honestly about their life. Her little brother felt proud at school, telling his classmates, "That's my sister on TV. She sings because she never gave up." Despite her growing fame, she kept life simple. She made sure her family had enough food and that their home felt warm and safe. She didn't rush to buy expensive things. Her focus remained on singing and staying true to her story. At night, when all the cameras and lights were gone, she still sat by her window and sang quietly. Her voice, soft and full of feeling, drifted into the night air. This was her time to reflect, to feel grounded, and to remember how far she had come, though she was now recognized everywhere. She didn't let pride change her. She often said, "I'm still that girl who sang alone in her room." And that was true. Fame hadn't made her forget who she was. Her journey was still unfolding, and challenges would continue to appear. But one thing was clear. She had found her voice. Not just the one people heard when she sang, but the voice inside her, the one that spoke of honesty, courage, and kindness. And no matter how far she traveled, she knew she would always carry her true self with her. That was the secret of her success. She stayed human, humble, and hopeful. And that's what made the world keep listening. The invitations never stopped coming. Big music festivals wanted her on their stages. Popular talk shows wanted to interview her again and again. Famous singers reached out, asking to perform with her. But even as her name became known around the country, she never lost her quiet way. Every time she stepped on a stage, she remembered where she had come from, her patched dress, her small house with a leaky roof, her mother's tired but proud eyes. These memories stayed close to her heart. One day, she received a letter that made her stop and think. It was an invitation to sing at one of the grandest theaters in the country, a place where only the most famous artists had performed. The letter said that her story had inspired thousands, and that people wanted to hear her voice live in this beautiful hall. At first, she felt overwhelmed. The theater was nothing like her small cafe or local charity event. The audience would include famous people, journalists, and music critics. Would they accept her? Would they listen with the same kindness as those who found her online? She spoke with her mother that night, sitting beside her bed. Her mother held her hand gently and said, "You are ready. You have always been ready. Just sing like you have always sung, with heart. Not for fame." Her friend helped her prepare, reminding her again and again that she didn't have to change for anyone. "You are loved for who you are," he said, "not who they expect you to be." On the day of the performance, she wore a simple but neat dress. Her hair was tied back plainly. She didn't try to hide her background. She carried it proudly. When she stepped into the grand theater, she felt a chill. The hall was beautiful, with golden lights, soft red seats, and a crowd dressed in their finest clothes. Backstage, she could hear the soft murmur of conversations. Her hands trembled a little as she waited for her turn. Finally, the moment came. The announcer introduced her as the voice that touched the nation's heart. The lights dimmed, and she walked onto the stage. At first, there was a hush. The crowd looked at her, simple, quiet, humble, so different from the stars they were used to seeing. But as soon as she opened her mouth to sing, everything else disappeared. Her voice filled the great hall. Every note carried the honesty and emotion that made her special. Her song spoke of hope, struggle, and beauty in simple things. The audience sat still, caught in the pure feeling of her performance. When she finished, the silence in the hall felt deep and full. Then, slowly at first, the applause began. Soon, it grew into a loud, standing ovation. The entire theater was on its feet, clapping not just for her voice, but for the truth she brought with her. Her eyes filled with tears as she smiled and bowed. At that moment, she realized something powerful. She didn't need to look like a star to be one. She didn't need to pretend or change to fit into the music world. She had touched hearts simply by being herself. After the show, journalists rushed to speak with her. They asked about her journey, her family, her future plans, but she answered simply and honestly, "I sing because it makes me feel alive. I sing because I want people to know that where you come from doesn't decide where you can go." She used her growing fame wisely. She visited small towns and gave free performances. She encouraged young singers, especially those who came from poor families. She often told them, "Your heart is more important than your background. If you believe in yourself, your voice can reach the world." Back home, her mother listened to the radio every evening. Her little brother told everyone proudly, "That's my sister." Their small house, though still humble, was now full of warmth and hope. She kept her promise to herself. Fame would never change who she was. Her voice belonged not to fancy producers or critics, but to everyone who believed that dreams were possible, no matter how hard life seemed. And so, the girl they once ignored, the girl they said was too poor to be talented, became a symbol of hope for many. Her story was no longer just about music, it was about courage, kindness, and staying true to oneself. Every night, before she went to bed, she still sat by her window and sang softly. Her voice, once hidden in a tiny room, now floated out into the world. But she never forgot. It all started because she had dared to sing, even when no one was listening. Even as her name spread far and wide, she remained grounded. People from across the country sent letters thanking her for giving them hope. In small homes, in busy cities, and even in other countries, people talked about her voice and her story. But for her, fame was never the goal. Every time she stepped onto a stage, she remembered where she came from, the cracked walls of her childhood home, the sound of her mother's soft voice, her brother's laughter, and the simple cafe where she sang to herself when no one cared. Her success allowed her to help her family in real ways. She made sure her mother had better medical care. She helped her brother go to a good school. She repaired their little house, fixing the roof so it no longer leaked when it rained. But she kept the house simple and warm. She didn't move away to a big fancy apartment. Her heart belonged to the place where her journey began. Many people expected her to change her image as she became more famous. Some suggested she should buy expensive clothes and live in luxury. But she didn't feel the need to prove anything through wealth. Instead, she stayed as she was, kind, humble, and focused on what really mattered. She also began visiting schools and community centers where children from poor families gathered. She shared her story with them in person. She told them, "It doesn't matter how much money you have. Your dreams are still important. Your talent is not decided by your wallet, but by your heart." In one school, a teacher told her about a shy girl who loved singing but was too afraid to perform. She sat with the girl and encouraged her gently. "You remind me of myself," she said softly. "Just sing for yourself first. Then you'll find that the world will listen too." The girl smiled and promised to try. Moments like that meant more to her than the applause at big events. She understood what it meant to feel unseen and unimportant. And she wanted every child who felt that way to know they were valuable too. Even though she continued to perform on large stages, she made time to return to her small town. She often walked through the streets where people once doubted her. Now neighbors smiled warmly and thanked her for bringing pride to their town. The cafe where she once washed dishes still kept a photo of her on the wall. Whenever she visited, she would sit at her favorite table and enjoy a simple cup of tea. It reminded her that no matter how far she traveled, this was home. One evening, as she sat by her window, looking at the stars, her brother joined her. He was growing up fast, and asked curiously, "Do you feel different now that you're famous?" She smiled gently and shook her head. "I feel the same inside," she said. "I'm still me. I just have more people listening now." That answer seemed simple, but it spoke of her truth. Fame had come quickly, but it didn't change her heart. She stayed connected to what mattered, her family, her town, her values, and her love for music. Over time, she released her first album. She chose songs that spoke of real-life hope, hardship, dreams, and love. The album was a success, But what touched her most were the messages from people who said her music helped them through difficult times. She also made a quiet decision. She would start a small music school in her town so that children who couldn't afford lessons could learn for free. She wanted every young dreamer to have a place where they felt supported. The school quickly became a special place. It wasn't fancy, but it was filled with laughter, music, and hope. Looking back, she often thought about the moment her friend had asked to record her singing in the cafe kitchen. At the time, she hadn't believed it would matter. She had almost said no, but that simple choice had opened a path she never imagined. Her story became a reminder to everyone: never judge someone by how they look or how much money they have. Talent, kindness, and courage can come from the most unexpected places, and so her journey continued, not just as a singer, but as a symbol of hope. A girl once ignored, once called too poor to be talented, had sung her way into the hearts of millions. But more than that, she had stayed true to herself. Every night, when the world grew quiet, she still sat by her window and sang softly. Her voice, once hidden in a forgotten town, now floated across the world. And as long as there were people to listen, she would keep singing, not for fame, but for love, truth, and the dream that had always lived inside her heart.